Hey, how you doing?
What's up, man?
Oh, not much. How are you?
I'm good. So I'm guessing, are you an atheist or
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good guess.
why is that?
My username has that in there, so
Oh, I didn't even see that. Why
I
is
ta I
that?
take it you're not
No, sir.
for sure. Christian.
Yeah.
All right. Can I ask how long have you been a Christian?
Um, like a week.
Oh, okay. So pretty new, huh?
Yeah, pretty new.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess since it's fresh in your mind, tell me what convinced you that this is the truth?
Um, well, you see, I almost died the day I became one. It's it was kind of crazy, and I kind of was like, I was doing something, and I prayed to the Lord, and somehow miraculously I somehow survived and made a great fortune off of something that is pretty impossible in today's world. Let's just say about a week ago. And throughout my whole life, I've been completely disregarding the Lord and, saying all these things, these not atheistic things, but these hateful things, because usually Christians have a bad narrative of what the Lord is and how you should display it and how all of that. But when I finally decided to just see what would happen, my life changed entirely.
So
So that
you're
is why.
saying that you had a near-death experience where you almost died. You prayed to God, and
Well,
not
before I
only did
went
you
into it,
live.
I didn't pray after. It was before, and I could have easily died in this situation, and it was
So
crazy because,
what did
huh?
you pray for, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure. I mean, I won't go into all of the details, but I prayed for my safety, and I prayed for the outcome. I mean that because I was hoping for a specific outcome, and I got it. You know what? I didn't just get it. I got it in 100 times anything I've ever dreamed about in my entire life.
Okay. I can't speak on so much because I don't know the details, and I
Absolutely.
can't have you I can't make you tell me anything you don't want me to. But
Right. Of course. Of course.
um so I guess for me, I've had very similar situations where I have not prayed, and things have been going very well for me, unbelievably well in certain situations, certain aspects of my life. And I don't acknowledge a God or anything. It's so we have a hit, we have a miss. How do we know that the hit is actually the cause of a God?
We don't. I just have faith in what it was that night because it was hardly a coincidence, in my opinion. But I mean, and also I feel like a good things can come and go, but when something extraordinary happens out of nothing, I believe that that has to be some type of blessing from the Lord.
Okay, so you take this on faith, and I'm just wondering why you would think that that's a good reason to take anything on. I see faith as an unreliable path to truth, and to be consistent with reality and to believe as many true things as possible, to be not accurate and knowledgeable. Why would you use faith at all? It seems like a horrible way to make a decision that something is true or not.
Well, it absolutely is. I mean, you basically have no scientific reasoning, but then again, anything that does with the Lord doesn't really have science behind it at all. I mean, we can't really scientifically prove there is a God, but things lead up to God as well. I mean, certain high IQ scientists believe in the Lord. So I mean, it's disagreed or
Sure,
not.
and many don't.
Exactly. Many don't absolutely, but I'm just saying, faith. It's just what some people choose to do off of that spiritual, like not spiritual, but that I don't know how to describe it, but it's like a I don't know how to describe it. I don't know. But it's just an urge to I don't how do I explain that? You can explain it. It's an indescribable feeling of just like righteousness, if that makes any sort of sense.
I believe it does. I believe I understand what you're saying. Do do you believe in the Bible? Like, do you believe the Bible's true?
Well, I mean, I haven't really been a Christian that long to study the Bible, but I mean, I've been reading one or two verses every day, but I believe I don't know. I got to read it more.
Do you think that if you found things in the Bible that you did not agree with, or you found were not accurate to reality, that that would cause issues with your faith?
No, not really.
No.
No.
Would you be fine accepting it as truth and somehow just saying that somehow it is what it is?
No, not that either. I wouldn't just say it is what it is. Well, first off, I'll say nothing can change what made me feel like that day. Second off, um if whatever you're saying, the Bible has things and I say it is what it is, and just disregard it even though it is called the word of God, which wouldn't be really truthful in my perspective. But I'd say maybe there's some things we don't know. Maybe there's some things that are metaphors for other things. Maybe there's things that we just don't understand yet. I mean, the Bible's a very, very old book, and a lot of mysteries happened back then that we have no idea about. So that's my answer.
Okay. So, I guess to give an example of what I'm talking about, the God of the Bible is seen to be just and good, and the things that they say are just and good. They're the things that we ought do and how we ought live. When this God is giving laws to his people on how they ought live and what they can do, he very specifically allows slavery. I'm very against that, and I think that even if we could get to a point where we said this God was real, clearly this God should not be worshipped or followed.
Oh, I mean,
How do you feel when, especially when you are eventually going to get to that point when you read your Bible more? This
uh-huh.
God is very clearly okay with slavery. How do you think you're going to reconcile that?
Yeah, I think I they actually taught me about this in school. Yeah, I had like a class dealing with that. I didn't really, I had no, attention to it back then, but now I'm basically, in essence, they were basically saying like the term slave back then was people owing other people money. So if you owed someone money, basically you were technically their slave until you paid the debt off. It wasn't actually make forcing people to work in like the farms and stuff, or whatever the term slave may be. But that's what the term slave means back then in that whole like area of like the Bible.
So, in the ancient Hebrew language, the word that we're looking for and the word that it uses is ebed, eved, and what that translates to is slave or servant. It means both, depending on the context. What you're
Yeah.
describing, the debt slavery, is indentured servitude. That is where, and typically not by choice, someone entered a contract that they would work for a certain amount of time to pay off a debt that they were not able to pay off. But slavery, as what I'm talking about, is the active practice of people owning people as legal property. That is slavery, and that definitely existed back in that time in the Bible. And God Himself, with His own mouth, allows His people to go and purchase other people and own them as legal property forever, pass them on to their kids as an inheritance, and so that they can continue to be owned. He allows His people to go and invade other places and then take POWs as forced laborers. It very clearly
Okay.
is God allowing slavery.
Well, I definitely wish I could um, elaborate on that topic, but I mean, that's all I said was pretty much all I have. You're definitely more in tune with this than I am. I gotta go, research it and do my research. But a
Of
question for
course.
you though, if that was the case, then obviously we know why slavery is wrong, right? But can I ask you, if God isn't real, then why is slavery wrong?
Because you're
Who determined it?
dehumanizing somebody. I don't understand why God would have to be real in order for it to be wrong.
Because who decides that it's wrong?
Well, I mean, clearly it doesn't matter if God is real for it to be right or wrong, because if God is real, at the very least, this God doesn't think it's wrong. You and I believe it is, so we believe it's wrong regardless of whether or not God is real.
Yeah, but you have to remember, some people think unaliving people are wrong. I mean, is right. Sorry, is right. And who am I to tell them that that's my vision, my view on life is right and his own is wrong? Who am I to tell him that?
You.
Oh, who am I? There's
You are
8
you.
billion people.
Yeah, you are you. That's exactly who you are to tell him that. And you can
Yeah,
explain
but
your reasoning and your position.
that doesn't make it any more right than someone else's.
We have a subjective morality, sure. And I don't understand what God's existence has to do to change that.
It has to do with it because it's a it's a truth. It's a hard truth that unaliving people are wrong. So I don't know why atheists
Why?
have this thing,
Why?
subjective
Because God doesn't
morality.
think that.
So Jesus didn't die for all of our sins.
Well, I mean, if I don't want to jump down that rabbit hole, but I mean, technically, according to the story, sure, he died for our sins, but I'm saying God gives
Right,
command.
but
God all throughout the Bible gives commands and orders to kill people, for people to
right.
go kill people, go kill those kids, go kill those women, go kill those men. This is how I want you to kill your own kids. This is how I want you to do this. This is how I'm going to go kill kids. So
Okay.
God clearly is okay with
And I'm
just
guessing
ending
this
life.
was the Old Testament.
Old Testament and New Testament, God just kills people.
Do you have a verse or anything in the New Testament that he says to kill people?
Uh,
Anything?
I don't have the verse, but I have the verse where,
Okay.
but I can tell you the story where he kills Ananias and
No,
Sapphira.
I think I need like the actual like text from the Bible,
Yeah,
rather than a story.
I encourage you to look up the text, look up the story of Ananias and Sapphira.
Sure, I'll look at it, but back
Hmm.
to the morality thing. Yeah, I mean, besides the whole God thing, I mean, what is right and wrong? I mean, yeah,
I don't, but my whole thing is just because there's suddenly a God to say, oh, I say this is right and wrong. So what? Now we just have another person that's giving their own subjective opinion.
I mean, but in where we can talk about how Jesus was the all good and he
Was he?
never did sin and he never, you
Was
know,
he? He broke the law. He didn't know that washing your hands was good before eating because he actively advised against it. He called a woman a dog because she wasn't a Hebrew, and he also scolded the Pharisees, the religious leaders, for not stoning children, putting them to death for being disobedient to their parents, like the law demanded.
I don't know where you're getting these
The
these these
Bible,
things from.
the Bible.
You need
I
to give
encourage
me
you to
the
read it.
exact verses.
That you look in the Gospels.
I mean, you're making a bunch of claims. I don't know why I have to provide the evidence.
I'm sorry that you seem to think that reading a book is too hard for you, but sure,
I
let me
mean,
grab
you
my Bible.
clearly read it, so I don't know why you can't provide the claims, even though you're
Yeah,
making them.
and I've read the Game of Thrones books, but I can't tell you what book Sansa was married to Tyrion in. I would have to actually stop and look at it. But I can
Uh,
tell you that it happened, and I would be correct that Sansa was married to Tyrion.
I didn't know it was so hard to memorize the claims that you're making.
Um, I did memorize them. I told them to you.
Yeah, you told them in stories. You didn't give me actual proof.
And okay, so if I can show you these verses, what would that do for you?
It would prove what you're saying is correct. What would
Okay,
it?
which would lead to what? Which would lead to you saying, "Wow, the God of the Bible's fucked up and does some bad things."
There you go. Exactly. There you go. I'm not gonna
Is that
just
what
be.
it would lead to?
Yes, I wouldn't be an ignorant Christian and just stay here and just
Well,
accept,
you
these
already
things
are an
happen.
ignorant Christian because you decided to become a Christian without reading the Bible first. It's like
And
signing a contract
that's what
without.
atheists do when they
It's
get
like
mad. They
signing a
insult.
contract without
That's what they
reading it.
insult when they're wrong.
I'm not insulting
I
you.
love atheists when they start insulting. That's how you know you lost the argument. I love it. I
I'm sorry.
absolutely love it.
What did I lose?
Huh?
I'm sorry. What did I lose for using your own words?
You lost. You
So
know what you
Ananias
lost,
and
really?
Sapphira is in
You
Acts 20
lost a
is
great
in Acts
chance to a
5.
great life. You lost a great chance to a better life for
So
yourself because right
In
now you're
Acts chapter
average.
5,
Right now you're
in
less
Acts
than
chapter 5,
average. Right now you're very less than average. Right now
okay?
you don't you have a future, but it's not the future that you really envision. You
So
don't
you're
have
gonna
your
let
true
me answer?
potential.
Are you gonna let me answer your question? So in Acts chapter 5, go ahead and write it down.
I'm listening.
So in Acts chapter 5, you'll see the story of Ananias and Sapphira. Ananias and Sapphira are two people who were killed by God. So we see in a New Testament passage where God kills
I'm talking
people.
about where Jesus called, where all the claims you were making of Jesus. Where is that?
This is one of the claims I make, because
Okay, okay.
you asked if I could show the verse where God kills someone in the New Testament, and I
I
said
didn't say
yes.
that. I didn't ask you to give me that claim.
Yes, you did
No,
earlier, and
I
then we moved
didn't.
on to the
You're
other
putting
things that
words
Jesus
in my
said.
mouth. I'm asking you to give me the
It's okay,
claim.
man. I will post this on YouTube later, and you can go back and see that you did
YouTube,
ask for this. Yeah,
you have 3 subscribers. No one's gonna watch you.
I don't care.
Yes, and we do care because you're making these
You
claims
care?
that
Why do
people
you
have to
care?
see. Who's gonna watch this
I'm
stuff? Nobody.
actually I do. I have a couple of viewers, and that's all that matters.
A couple of viewers. You
Yeah.
have to show it to new viewers. No one new watches your page.
Oh,
No, you don't. You have less than
technically
a
they're
hundred
new because two
subscribers.
weeks ago I didn't
You
have
have
them,
less than a
so
hundred subs.
they're new, bro. I don't care.
You have less than 100 subscribers.
And do you think I care? You
Yes, you
gotta
should
start
care
somewhere.
because your audience is what matters. Start somewhere.
No,
You're not
no,
bro. You're
wait,
posting
no,
shit
no. Actually, the
content.
truth is what matters.
You're posting trash content. That's why no one's watching it because it's not the truth. What?
I'm
No
sorry.
one's watching you because your content is shit.
I'm sorry. Are we trying to actually get back to the conversation, or do you just
Fuck the
want to, as quote
conversation.
what you said, insulting because you lost the conversation?
Bro, I'm not I'm telling you the
You
truth.
need to stop embarrassing yourself.
And Barry, you're posting trash content on your YouTube channel
Uh,
and expecting people to
how
watch
am
it
I?
even though it's not the truth.
Oh,
That's why
I don't
people
think
watch
having
Cliff.
conversations of
That's why
people.
people watch Cliff.
I don't
That's
think
why
having
people watch
conversations.
Sam.
Yeah,
Cliff.
Cliff is trash.
Yeah,
if you
that's why people watch him because he says the truth.
no,
That's why nobody
Cliff is
watches you
trash.
dumbass.
Cliff is
You
trash, bro. If you think Cliff is
people
smart,
watch
something's wrong with
him.
you.
He makes money off YouTube
Yeah,
because he tells the truth.
people
You
watch.
don't make money off YouTube because you tell shit.
Yeah, people watch entertainment,
Jesus is
stupid
the
idiots like
Omega, the
that.
truth, the life. And in
Prove it.
my testimony,
Prove it.
Jesus prevails through the darkness.
Prove it.
Oh, my mama, we lit. Let's
Prove it.
get it. Amen. Shut your atheist ass up.
Prove it.
Man, I pray for you, my dog. I
You
pray for you.
haven't
I
even
love
read
you.
your
I
Bible.
love
You
you.
are
Let
the
the
most
Holy Spirit
ignorant
infuse
type
you
of
with the
Christian that
light
there is,
of
my
this
guy.
world. And let everybody in this world view you as one.
Dude, we're having a conversation, or you can go. You're gonna calm down, or you can go away.
I love you, my brother.
So, are you gonna calm
I
down, or are you
love
gonna go
you.
away?
I love
All right, you can come back once you calm down. Hey, Tyler, how you doing?
Good, man. How about you?
I'm doing all right.
Good.
Are you a Christian?
I am.
Awesome, awesome. Do you believe the Bible is true?
I do.
Sweet. How long have you been a Christian?
Um, I would say so. I grew up as a Christian, and then, probably through my mid-teens, I fell from it. And actually was probably what I'd consider to be agnostic for a little while. And then I actually did some reading into it and converted back and gave my life to the Lord.
All right, solid. How long ago was your I guess your rededication?
About a year and a half ago.
All right, for sure. What would you like to talk about?
Well, I guess what your prompts that you put up, and I guess I think it's fair that you pose the question. So if you wouldn't mind just clarifying what your justification behind that is, and I can hopefully give you an answer.
My justification in asking the questions.
Yeah, like why? I'm assuming you're atheist, so why you don't believe in the Bible?
You know what? I got a violation warning, so I will restart and come back. If you'd like to come back in like 1 minute, we'll be able to talk more.
You're restarting the live?
Yeah, I'll restart right now.
Okay, we'll do.
All right. Take two, trying again. All right, trying this again. See if our guest Tyler returns. Oh, there you are. Awesome. All right. Thanks for your patience and cooperation with that.
Yeah, no
Anyway,
worries.
you were asking me about the motivation for my questions.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, I'm just not convinced of these claims. That the Bible is true, that a God exists. I'm still kind of unclear of what exactly the definition of a God is. I feel like everyone has different answers to that, different definitions, so that's also unclear to me. At the end, it seems like there's a lot that is being said, but I don't know how to verify that it's true. So I like having these discussions with people that do think it's true to hear their responses and kind of pick their brain, see if they can pick mine. And my goal is never to deconvert or convert anybody else from their beliefs. I just
Mhm.
like to understand their position a little more, and hopefully they can understand where I'm coming from a bit more. Hopefully we learn something, or someone listening learns something.
No, absolutely, man. I respect that. So yeah, I guess let's start with the question of, and I'll use myself as an example why I believe what I believe. So yeah, I guess we'll start with the resurrection, because personally I believe if really the resurrection itself is the verification of the truth of the Bible, right? Because, the Bible could all be said, but if that part of it isn't true, then the rest of it is not, right? If Jesus didn't rise, then what's the point? Is basically what I'm saying, right? So let's look at the evidence. So, are you familiar with the Gospels, the disciples?
Yes, yes. The 12 disciples, and Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Gospels for that.
Right. So, outlined in those, it kind of just, and especially in the later New Testament, it kind of outlined really just their testaments of Jesus and their preaching after that. So, we have the 12. After Jesus supposedly died, right? And there was eyewitness testimony that Jesus did in fact die, right? I guess before I say all this, do you think Jesus was a real person that existed?
Yeah, but so for me, I personally have no issue with the claim that there was a man named Jesus. My issue kind of comes where, he did supernatural things and was God.
Right. So, I mean, if you start from the beginning of Matthew, or the beginning of any gospel for that matter, multiple miracles were performed with hundreds of eyewitness testimonies, right? I've heard people say, when I say that, oh, maybe it was magic, right? Something like that. Which, I mean, okay, fair claim, but really, I basically all of our moral absolutes and all of our historical evidence is based off of anecdotes and human testimonies, right? I mean, there's really no moral absolutes that we actually have. For example, I could say, okay, what color is the sky? And then you might say, oh, it's blue. I'd say, what's blue? How can you be sure that it's blue? What is blue? What are you basing that off of, right? So that's essentially the point I'm getting at here, is that really all of our historical evidence is based off those anecdotes. So there's multiple recorded and hundreds of eyewitness testimonies that recorded those miracles taking place, as well as evidence to support that, not only did Jesus live, but he did perform these miracles themselves from other literature, right? Now, if we get past that part and then we get to the death, right? Jesus did die. That was recorded by multiple Roman texts, in addition to the Bible. Now, after that, and I'm blanking on where the passage is here. It's pretty late where I am, but essentially, once God was supposed to be dead, right? He appeared to the disciples. Now, those were 12 disciples that saw Jesus in the flesh. They saw the holes in his hand, and they saw him with his own eyes. He was alive, right? Now, I've heard the argument too that, okay, maybe they were hallucinating, right? Maybe they this or that, right? Okay. So you move past that. Jesus goes back up into heaven. Multiple days later, they're fishing on the sea, and a big storm comes, and Jesus is seen walking on water by the disciples. Not only that, but as they returned to shore, there was hundreds of people that saw Jesus and saw the holes in his hands and saw him in the flesh and verified that that was him, right? So those are hundreds of eyewitness testimonies that confirm that Jesus was alive after he was supposed to be dead, right? Now, I guess additionally, in addition to that, the disciples themselves died for their beliefs, and it mentions it in Revelation and various passages of the torture and absolute malicious acts and malicious ways that the disciples were executed. Can I say that word on TikTok? Am I going too far off here?
I think as long as you don't use it a lot, we'll be okay.
Okay. Yeah. So the multiple ways that they were unalived was, they were burned, they were stoned, they were hung upside down. I believe Peter was, no, not Peter. One of them was essentially completely, what's the most appropriate way to say this? Let's just say his exterior skin was not a part of his body anymore, right?
Yeah.
Just horrible things happening to them,
Yeah.
right? And with your, I guess, interpretation of that, they would have had to do that for a lie. They died with the lie, right? Now, you'll have to forgive me, and I can pull up the text if you want, but there has been multiple scientific studies done in recent times pretty much proving the fact that if you truthfully believe something, you'd be willing to die for that. If you say that you believe something and you know deep down that that's not true, you're not going to die for that, right? So I guess given those facts, the eyewitness testimonies, which, again, all historical data is essentially based off of anecdotal evidence, and, the fact that they died for their beliefs, that seems pretty convincing to at least me that, this is more than likely a probable story.
Okay. You said a lot, and I'm gonna try to address it. But I think
Yeah,
before
sorry,
it
I
hurts,
kind
then
of spilled out a lot of you there. So if you need me to clarify on anything, feel free to chime in.
you're
But
good. So we started with the Gospels being testimonies, eyewitness testimonies of Jesus. We know from the dating that that's not true. The gospel stories are not eyewitness testimonies. They are the writings of the followers of the disciples. So it's they said they saw type of situation. We also
so
know
they
that we
saw
also know
being an
that
eyewitness testimony.
we also know that Mark is the main gospel, and we know that Matthew and Luke copied from Mark, and then John is more of kind of a standalone gospel, um, and we can see that from the comparison. So really, we have a couple of people that claim all these people saw him. We don't actually have any verification that it was hundreds of people that saw him. We just have a couple of anonymous dudes that wrote that. Um, so it seems pretty weak evidence to say we have manuscripts that make these stories. We have no way to verify them, but therefore must be evidence that it's true. It just doesn't. It's not motivating to me at all. And then the martyrs. I too was raised Christian, and I heard all the stories of that you were saying about the martyrs and stuff like that. I do find it very interesting though that we have Christian universities, and we have PhD holders like Sean McDowell and stuff that are Christian that say the evidence only supports 2 to 3 people that we can actually say died for their beliefs. That's Peter, Paul, sometimes depending on what you're looking at, maybe John, um, or I'm sorry, James. Everybody else, we don't have good evidence to support the martyrdom stories for them. So again, it's just a couple guys that quote unquote died for their beliefs. And I do understand and take the position as well that they probably did believe it. They probably did not think they were dying for a lie. I have no issue with that. That has nothing to do with what they died for actually being true, though. Just because you die for something doesn't mean the thing you died for was true. You can believe that it was, and it not be. And also the die for a lie thing, I think is pretty interesting, because I think we can very easily debunk that. I don't think that's clear across the board or consistent across the board that if you know it's a lie, that you would not die for it. So like for example, do you have kids or like a niece or nephew or anything like that?
No, I sure hope I don't. I'm too young for that. But
Okay, no, I got you. Like younger siblings or anything like that.
I have an older
Okay,
sibling.
okay. Well, say you had a little brother, or say you had a son, a daughter, or whatever the case is. Someone breaks into your home, and you hide this child, in the laundry basket of the closet. And you say, "Hey, you hide. You don't come out for anything, no matter what you hear, unless I come and get you or a police officer comes and gets you. You don't make a sound." And you go down, you confront the person who intruded into your home. Let's say it doesn't go well for you, and they're asking if there's anyone else in the home, and they want to unalive everyone in the home. Are you going to die for the lie, the knowing lie, that you have a child upstairs? Are you going to say, nah, it's just me? Or are you going to be like, you know what? There is somebody else here. I hid a kid upstairs in the laundry basket. Would you be willing to die for that lie?
Yeah, because there's an external motivation, an intrinsic
So,
good
so I,
motivation
th- I
for
think
it.
you and I would agree then that that's not a true statement. We cannot say that people will not die for things they know are lies, because we can very easily come up with an example where we would tell a lie and we would be damn willing to die for it.
But so that doesn't. I don't really see how that connects though, because really, when I'm lying, when the robber breaks in, that's not for me, right?
I, I, I don't think that that's relevant to my point. My whole point is that you can tell a lie, given the motivation behind it, though. Yeah, you might be completely motivated to die for it. It all depends on the situation and the factors
Then
of the
what do you
individual
think the
involved.
disciples' motivation was behind it?
Well, I think that they didn't. I don't think they thought that they were lying. I think they thought that they were telling the truth. But like I
So
said, that has nothing to do with whether what they said was actually true. I want to know if it was, because
right.
we have historians that have written of emperors and stuff like that performing miracles and healing people, bringing people back from the dead. And while we admit that the emperor was a real person, we don't at all admit that he was healing people and curing, diseases and stuff like that. Just because people claimed a thing, we needed to be verified. And that's more than we have for Jesus, because we don't even have historians that confirm Jesus did anything. All we have is historians that confirm his followers claim he did. We don't have a single historian that actually confirms Jesus healed anyone or did any miracles or rose from the dead.
Okay, so I guess I don't see what you're saying. You're saying we don't have a single historian. So that's the requirement for verification of that is a historian to verify that?
No, I'm saying that the documentation would be an amazing start for this, but we don't even have any people that were documenting things in that time period that can confirm that Jesus did anything like that. We do have historians, though, that confirm that were actually accurately documenting the things that were happening around them, that other people did perform miracles and stuff like that too. But even that we take with a grain of salt because they cannot verify that these miracles happened. They just show that this is the claim, this is what happened. But with Jesus, the historians that were alive during Jesus' time that were recording what was happening never wrote about Jesus. Historians only after Jesus' time period started writing about him, saying what his followers claimed he said and did. But none of them ever actually confirmed that he did anything or said anything, which I think is pretty interesting.
I guess. I mean, I see where you're coming from. I think you're saying essentially that we should take everything with a grain of salt. Where, like, okay, we'll talk about the existence of the Roman Empire, right? That's prove we essentially take that as truth. However, same thing with the gospel is that that's an eyewitness testimony, right?
No, no, it's not. It's someone writing what they heard the eyewitness, quote unquote, say.
You're saying about the Roman Empire?
No, I'm saying the Gospels. The Gospels were not written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They were written by the followers of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
That is not true.
Yeah,
The
yeah. Even in Luke, he flat out admits that he got that from, or that they got these stories and these writings from the people who witnessed them. They are the people writing them are not the people that um, were the eyewitnesses.
so the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke and John were actually writings to the church of basically their individual accounts. Additionally, like a lot of the New Testament passages were, Paul writing to the church as well. So,
Yeah, but Paul's writings are later, and even
right.
half of Paul's writings are suspected forgeries because of the way they contradict each other and the writing styles being so different.
But the writing styles being, what do you mean, like writing styles, like tone or?
Yeah, I like tone, and as well as there are some things where he talks about how women should be silent in church and not be able to teach over men, while other times he seems perfectly fine with women being able to teach. Um, there are different things that he says in some of his letters that he seems to contradict in others. So it seems that there are two different authors that are quote unquote Paul writing, which means that either he has no idea what he's talking about, he's making this shit up as he goes, or we have two writers and someone is not Paul.
Or it could be because the Gospels were or the passages of Paul, I should say, were written over a long period of time.
And so what if you're telling the truth? Shouldn't your message still be consistent?
Well, that's essentially, I mean, not really, no. I mean, you're talking about contradictory statements, but again, the Bible itself is God's teaching through humans, right? And especially a lot of the things that's taken out of the NIV version and stuff are lost in translation, right? You talked about, I think with the other guy, about like the slavery aspect of it, and that is true. I think it's either Exodus or Leviticus talking about essentially a slave being a servant to somebody that they did wrong things to, and that they were essentially a slave to them until their dues were paid.
That the indentured servitude, you can find that both in Exodus and Leviticus, but that was only for Hebrew males. The Hebrew women were lifelong, and non-Hebrews were lifelong slaves. They were seen as legal property.
Not within the Israelite tribe.
Yeah, within the Israelite tribe, that's what God says in Leviticus 25.
I believe that was referencing the Pharisees.
Leviticus isn't referencing the Pharisees. Leviticus chapter 25 is God speaking, and it's him telling Moses, this is what you tell the people of Israel on how they ought live, what they ought do, how they should interact with each other. And when he gets to verse 44 through 46, he says, as for the male and female slaves whom you may have, it is from the nations around you that you may acquire them. You may also acquire them from the aliens residing with you, from their families that are born in your land, and they will be your property. You may keep them as a possession for your children after you, and for them to inherit as property. You may treat these as slaves, but as for your fellow Hebrews, you shall not rule over them ruthlessly. So God is very specifically allowing his people to go and own other people as property, pass them on to their children as property. This is very clearly slavery.
So you don't think any historical context has anything to do with that, though? Seeing as how in Exodus the Israelites were enslaved.
Well, we actually can't verify that historically.
That the Israelites were enslaved?
By Egypt, no. The Exodus doesn't have any historical verification. Moses isn't even a historical figure.
Yeah, I believe it is.
No, you can actually look up rabbis that will say that they don't believe Moses was a real guy. He's more of like a King Arthur legendary figure.
Yeah, but that's one rabbi, right?
You can find rabbis.
Hmm?
No, you can find rabbis. Even like I believe Rebel Rabbi on TikTok here will even agree with that as well. That they don't recognize Moses as a real person. They don't recognize the Exodus as a historical thing. This is one of those like metaphorical allegory stories that they have to explain their history and culture.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess the proof is in. I mean, you can say, sure, there's no outside text that historically verifies it. But again, if you look at pieces of the Bible, they align with, Roman script or Roman texts, right? Like, for example, that Jesus was a real person, right? So that doesn't completely negate the Bible from that situation. The Bible clearly talks about Moses, right?
Yes, the Bible talks about Moses.
Right. So believing that Moses was a real person doesn't require outside resources to verify the Bible.
Well, the Bible isn't verified, so just because the Bible says a thing does not mean that we should accept that thing as truth.
I mean, but you could pretty much take that argument with any single historical text. I mean, how do we know that George Washington was a real person? Did you see him?
Because we have his clothes, we have his teeth, we have his handwriting, we have his house. We have
How do you know
evidence
that was
that
his?
shows, because we can trace it, and we can demonstrate it. So we can trace things to George Washington. We can demonstrate his existence. And I'm wondering, how can we do that for Moses when many people have tried and have come up with nothing and have said, hey, these stories mean a lot to us. We can't say that he's a real person.
Okay. All right. Well,
And and,
yeah. I
and,
mean,
and I am curious though, like why would, because I guess this would fit with my last point, why would this God be worthy of worship when they do allow horrible things like slavery and stuff like that?
because I look at personally, I look at the evidence that I see, which I mean, we don't necessarily agree on that. Like, I look at the gospel. Another point I look at is creation, right? I feel like, at least looking at creation, what I can see with my own two eyes, that there's an intelligent creator behind that. And the Bible clearly talks about, God being the judge. So a lot of these,
Oh man,
you
sorry.
can pick pieces out of the Bible and stuff and say they're contradictory, or, why would God do this? And to be honest with you, a lot of times I don't know, right? Because the Bible clearly states that God is the judge, right? And really, as, you know, at least what Christians believe, as followers of Him, we aren't really worthy of that judgment, right?
Well, if the judge is being unfair, then shouldn't we call out the judge for that?
Unfair according to who? Society?
To us as well as his own standard. So when God says don't oppress people, but then allows slavery, when God says thou shalt not kill, but then says go kill those babies, when God says that he will do right and protect the innocent, but then gives curses that involve children being eaten by their parents and women being raped, I think that that is very clearly him going against his own law and his own moral standard, and showing that he's hypocritical, narcissistic, impulsive, and emotional.
Sorry, you said that. What was the last piece of that? The
And
expecting
it,
curses?
that where he gives curses that involve children being eaten by their parents and women getting raped. So
What
I think it's very
what
clear
verse is
that.
that in?
So I think Deuteronomy 28 is or so there's Deuteronomy
Deuteronomy 22
28,
verse
Leviticus
27.
26 I believe also has it,
Are you
and
referencing
Second
Deuteronomy
Samuel.
22 verse 27 or 28? I think.
No, I'm
Or
referencing Deuteronomy 28. Let's see, Deuteronomy chapter 28. Starting in verse 53, it says that, so Deuteronomy 28 is basically God saying that, hey, people, if you worship me and follow me correctly, I'll bless you. And this is how I'll bless you. And there's 14 verses where God talks about how he's going to bless them. And then there's like 40 something verses where he's like, but if you don't, I'm going to cause all this shit to happen to you. One of that being that he will make them starve so bad that they'll cannibalize their children. And you'll see that starting in verse 53.
do you mind reading? I don't have my Bible with me right now. Do
Sure,
you mind reading?
sure. In desperation, straits to which the enemy siege reduces you, you will eat the fruit of your womb, the flesh of your own sons and daughters, whom the Lord your God has given you. Even the most refined and gentle of men among you will begrudge food to his own brother, to the wife whom he embraces, and to the last of his remaining children, giving to none of them the flesh of his children whom he is eating, because nothing else remains to him. In the desperate straits to which the enemy siege will reduce you to all in all your towns, she who is the most refined and gentle among you, so gentle and refined that she does not venture to set the sole of her foot on the ground, will begrudge the food of the husband whom she has embraced, to her own son, to her own daughter, begrudging even the afterbirth that becomes from between her thighs and the children that she bears, because she is eating them in secret, for lack of anything else, in the desperate straits in which the enemy's siege will reduce you in your towns. So this
Okay,
is
so
God giving the punishment that if his people don't follow him, he will make them starve. He will put them in situations where they will end up starving to the point that they eat their own kids.
go back. Sorry, backtrack to the first part of that, like the first part of the sentence of that. Do you mind if you read that off one more time?
Uh,
Just like the first verse, essentially.
in the desperate straits to which the enemy sees reduces you, you will eat the fruit of your womb, the flesh of your own sons and daughters, whom the Lord your God has given you.
So the piece I see from that is you will. So it's not saying I will make you, it's saying you will. You have to realize that this time, this is after the fall. This is when humans have free will. So could it not be also interpreted that this is almost a warning, saying that if you do not follow this, that you will fall down this path?
No, this is a warning of what God will cause to have happen to them if they disobey
He
him.
doesn't explicitly say that I will do that to you. He said you will do this, though.
So you don't so you don't agree that if someone sets up a system and sets up rules and says that if you follow the rules this will happen and if you don't follow the rules these will happen, that they did not set that system up?
Not necessarily. I mean, actions have
Okay.
consequences, so
Okay, so
warning
you don't
somebody of
believe God's in control?
consequences. Huh?
So then is your position that God isn't in control? God is merely trying to explain how the system works, but he's not in control of the system?
Okay, if I say that, okay, if you drive a car without wearing a seatbelt, you're gonna get a lot of injury, right? Is that me basically premeditating that on you and saying, oh, I'm gonna cause that? No, that's not even remotely related. God's not enforcing that. You have to realize too, at this time, the world is under the rule of Satan, right? And that's what Christians believe. They don't believe that this world is, God doesn't have control over this world, right?
Yes, he
The
does.
devil
Even
does.
in the Bible, Satan needs permission in order to do things.
Like, oh, you're saying in Job? Is that what you're referencing?
Like in Job, or when the lying spirit goes to deceive the prophets of Ahab. It's God who says, "Go ahead and whisper the lies, and I will bless and protect the lies, so that they'll be believed."
Satan doesn't ask permission of God in Job. Satan says that, oh, Job, if you take all this, you give him all this great stuff. If you take it away from him, he's not going to follow you. And God said, go ahead, try it.
Yeah,
Satan doesn't
but Satan couldn't do
explicitly
that
ask him
without
for
God saying
permission.
it, because God gave the outlines. You cannot harm him physically. The next time he said you can harm him physically. God clearly is the one that allows what happens and what does not happen.
That doesn't mean that he specifically controlled that scenario, though. If just because one person, like if I were to say something, hey, can you do this? And then you say, sure. Does that then guarantee that you're going to do that thing? No. That I still don't have control over your true intention, right? So just because that God said go ahead, but you can't kill him, that doesn't mean that Satan wouldn't do that. He was trying to test God, right?
So it is your position that God is not all powerful, that he's not in control of things.
He's not in control of this world, no.
Okay. So again, you do not take God to be all powerful. He did not set up the system.
Not he was all powerful in Genesis until the fall happened and humans decided to stray away from God and live by their own judgment, right? And after that happened, Satan rules over the world. God has no dominion over the decisions, like over us and our decisions in this world. He asks us to follow him, but we have free will. He doesn't make us say, you have to follow me. Just like, I'm a Christian and you're an atheist. God's not saying, hey, you have to follow me. He's saying that if you follow me, then you'll essentially go to heaven. I mean, that's what.
Okay, so I guess I'm just a little bit confused, because if you're saying that God isn't all powerful and doesn't have authority over Satan or anything, it makes it seem that God is just like, what good is God? What's the purpose of God if everything and everyone seems to be more powerful than God?
Because this world's imperfect, right? And I mean, I think you can agree that religious belief aside, there is evil in this world, right?
I think there are things that we label as evil.
You think there are things that, sorry, or what?
I think there are things that we label as evil.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. One more time, please.
I said that I think that there are things that we label as evil. Yes.
Label as evil. Gotcha. Okay, yeah.
But,
So
but that can be subjective depending on the person.
exactly, and that's what Christianity provides. Christianity provides essentially a moral compass to navigate those situations, and that's the
Yeah,
purpose of
but
it.
a very contradictory and broken moral compass. Like I said, it says thou shalt not kill, but then it
Contradictory
says
to
to
what?
go kill those
Contradictory
kids.
to itself or contradictory to society?
Contradictory
Because
to
yes, it is.
itself.
I mean, sure, you can look at certain passages that were probably lost in translation. Sure.
So you don't believe the Bible is 100% true then?
No, I do believe it is 100% true. But I don't think it's really necessarily a meaningful comparison to pick verses that, were written by different people. And then even after Jesus, it was out of his hands, it was translated over thousands of years, right?
Yeah, but I guess my question is that if you believe that the Bible is true, then how are you choosing to ignore when it does contradict itself?
I, I, I,
Would that not be evidence to say, hey, something about this is wrong, whether the fact that it's not true or that if it is true, it's morally skewed?
because the contradictory aspects of it aren't divinely inspired. It's, again, lost in translation through human interaction over thousands of years, right?
So when it says thou shalt not murder and then it says go kill those kids or it has God killing kids, do we not recognize that as a contradiction?
Again, I'm not the judge, right? And it states that very
You
clearly
are
that
though.
God is the ultimate judge. And you're referencing what verse? The isn't it the one where it's like the 40 children and the 2 she bears or whatever?
Well, I was thinking more specifically in 2 Samuel 12. That's
I
the
think it was
story of Bathsheba and David and the aftermath of that.
Bathsheba and David. That was Song of Solomon, no?
2 Samuel.
Samuel. Okay.
It's in
Um,
2 Samuel chapter 12 where the prophet Nathan comes and tells him that, hey, there was a rich man and a poor man. The poor man had a sheep, got stolen by the rich man. And David's like, how terrible. This is an injustice. Punishment should be given to the rich man. And the prophet's like, oh, but David, you are the man. And David's like, you're right. I've sinned against the Lord. I'm sorry. What must I do? And Nathan says that because he has repented basically that God will spare him, but because he still did this thing, there's still going to be a punishment. There's two parts to the punishment. One is that his wives would be taken by another man in front of all of Israel, which happens later on. So God involved the assault of women in his punishment, as well as the death of his infant son that was just born to Bathsheba. Which the
so
son did die after 7 days of sickness and agony.
So again, that's a judgment call that I can't make, but at least what I see from it is Bathsheba. Bathsheba was not David's husband. She was married to another man, and essentially what David did was he had him put at the front of the battle lines and had him killed, so that he could be with Bathsheba. They then produced that child, and God saw that as sexual immortality, which is laid out in Leviticus, I think. So I guess that was the justification behind it.
I don't know how that justifies killing a kid.
I mean, I can't really make that call.
I think you can, and I think you should. I think ignoring the question. I think abstaining from making a judgment call on when God says thou shalt not murder, and then God takes the life of a 7-day-old, that we would say, that isn't consistent. I think that we should make that judgment call.
But again, my view on God and my conviction that God is the Father is not based on contradictory. It's based on evidence that I personally see. So even if my, I can't make, and again, I'm speaking for somebody else, and at least from my beliefs, God is the judge, and as a human, I don't have the power to make that judge. I can't speak for God, right? I can only interpret, okay?
I don't want you to
And
speak
I
for
guess,
God. I want you to speak for what is right and what is just. And unless you're saying that killing 7-day-olds to punish what the parents did is okay, then you should speak out that that is not just.
but again, I don't know the reasoning behind it, so I can't speak out on that.
So you're saying that there are some situations where the just and right thing to do is to kill a 7-day-old for what the parents did?
You keep asking me the questions. I'm giving you the answer.
You're really not. You're saying I'm not in that position. I can't do that. But I can't say one way or the other. But in saying that, you're basically saying, I guess in some cases, killing a 7-day-old is the right thing to do, is the just thing to do.
I'm not saying that whatsoever, and I'm not. I hope and it probably seems like I'm dodging the question, but I'm not. Again, my Christianly worldview is that part of it contains that I am not the judge. I can't make that call for God. And we look at it from a societal perspective and say, yeah, hey, that's bad and it's not good. And honestly, me looking from a societal perspective, I honestly see where you're coming from.
I don't
But
want you to look at
again,
it from a societal perspective. You yourself, just you. Don't think of society. Think of just you.
so,
Do
so
you think
subjective
that it
perspective.
is ever okay to kill a 7-day-old for any reason?
So, but my subjective perspective is based off my biblical worldview. So again, it
So
comes
you
back
do?
full circle, and I can't make that judgment based on God's
Well,
judgments.
it's okay because you don't have to, because the Bible shows that this is God's judgment, and so the Bible is saying that God decided that this was the okay thing to do, to kill a 7-day-old. So if you really don't want to put some thought into it and you just want to go with what the Bible says, then the answer should be very clearly yes. There are some situations where it's okay to kill a 7-day-old, and that's when God wants to, or orders it. But it seems like you can't even be consistent and say what your own logic would lead to, which is that.
Sorry, say that last part again. Sorry, my phone's like super quiet right now.
No, you're fine. I'm saying that it would that in order to be consistent, you would have to say that if you believe in the Bible, and your view is based off the Bible, then yes, it is sometimes okay to kill kids, and that's when God says it or wants it to happen. I don't know why you're avoiding saying that if your view is the biblical view.
I mean, I don't specifically. I can't make a judgment on that specific, but what I do agree with is God and His teachings, right? So if that's included in it, I mean, I don't know why He chose to do that, to be honest with you, but I guess I agree with it because I agree with God, right?
Okay.
Again,
Do you
I
agree
don't know
with
why that
the other aspect where God involved women getting assaulted as part of the
woman
punishment?
getting assaulted.
Yeah. I said that the first part of the punishment was that David's wives were going to be taken by another man publicly in front of Israel, and it happens 3-4 chapters later.
That doesn't reference being assaulted. How does that reference being assaulted, though?
Because the context shows that in the time of war, that the men decided in an act of dominance to the other king, they would take his wives.
So how is that God's interaction for that? Again, free
Be,
will. How is that God's interaction to
because God's the one that
commit those acts
set
to those
that as
women?
the curse.
Yeah, God said that he will lose his wives, but he didn't say that they would be attacked.
Yes, yes, he said that he would that another man would take them in publicly in front of all of Israel.
Yeah, as in marriage.
No, he did not marry them.
That's what it means by publicly taking them,
No,
which is to...
no. Actually, what ended up happening was his own son led a revolt against David. David fled from the city, and when Absalom took over the city, in a show of defiance and dominance to his father, he took his father's wives on the rooftop of the palace in front of all Israel and did not marry them, but raped them.
You're talking about Solomon?
No, I'm talking about Absalom.
Oh, okay. Again, that's imperfect decision of an imperfect world.
But it's the decision that God...
That goes back to what I was saying before, which is that
chose
God
to put in his place.
Which is that God doesn't have dominion over this world. Even if he says something like this will happen, again, that's out of his control, right?
It clearly isn't. If we can see God halting the sun in the sky, if we can see God making wars go in the favor of the way that he wants it to, if God can kill people left and right because he wills it, clearly God has control over the elements, over the people, over life. God clearly has control over the earth in the Bible, and it's shown multiple times over and over again that God can control things. So when God gives the curse that involves this woman being insulted, God is the one choosing, I am punishing you in this way. Your wives are going to be assaulted.
But you can't... Okay, so first off, I don't know where you're getting the holding the sun in the hands. I mean, that's more just of a figurative measure of speech.
It's a story in Joshua. They were in the middle of a battle and they were losing daylight, and Joshua was worried that without them being able to see, they would lose the battle. And God told him to raise his hands, and the sun would halt in the sky, and the sun halted in the sky, giving them a few more daylight hours. It is a literal story of the sun being halted in the sky.
So that's, again, God working through people, which is my point, which is he doesn't have any interactions with the earth, but people who accept him.
God halting the sun is God interacting with the earth. God forming man out of the dust is God interacting with the earth.
Again,
God turning water into wine is him interacting with the earth.
So first off, the dust was before the fall, when God did have dominion over the earth, before humans gave into Satan. The water into wine, that's Jesus in the form of God, right?
That's so God.
Yeah, but that's
cool. So God was able to control things.
It's a very hard concept, and I honestly struggle with that one too, which is the Trinity, which is that basically the idea that God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Yeah, all three of them, they're essentially the way I see it and the way I interpret it is that God, the deity, he essentially transcends human form. So it's not really we call him the Father, but realistically that's just the term assigned to him. But he's really not he's not even a human. He transcends all form of being that we can even comprehend.
Right.
Jesus was God himself coming into the form of man, right? Mm-hmm. So it's separate, but it's the same. So it's a little bit weird of what we believe. But yeah, so that's why he had control over the earth and, divine power, was because he was still God, but he was in the form of man.
So you're saying that God can't do anything without somebody helping him? Why is your God very weak?
That's not at all. You're saying somebody helping him, but I just said that he is the sun.
You said he needs man. He needs man to stop the sun. He needed a man's cloak flesh in order to manipulate water into wine. So it seems that your God is very weak and relies on things and things and people in order for him to
He didn't
do
rely on that. He took
himself.
that form in order to come to Earth and be able to be seen, and for humans to be able to
Could
comprehend him.
could God have turned water into wine at that wedding if he was not physically there as Jesus?
Sorry?
If Jesus was not at that wedding, if it was just God up in heaven, could God have turned water into wine at that wedding?
Through somebody, yes.
So your God relies on somebody and needs something to do his stuff with. And I'm wondering why are you portraying such a weak God?
In terms of the world, that's out of his control, because we as humans had made that decision. Adam and Eve made that decision to go away from God on this earth, and he has control over the heavenly domain and the spiritual domain, but not over this earth. Because in Genesis, he talks about, Adam and Eve having domain over the earth, all the animals on the land, all the fish in the sea, all the birds in the sky. And, we had dominion over that. He created it for us. And then with the fall, we essentially took on the role of God, as it's put, and decided to judge for ourselves, right? And that goes back to what I was talking about, of God being the judge. God before the fall was the ultimate judge. He told Adam and Eve, don't eat from the apple of knowledge of good and evil, or the tree from the knowledge of good of evil.
Right.
He told that because he knew the consequences of that, and then he knew what was best for them, right? As humans, Adam and Eve, they decided to create their own judgments and eat from that tree. And because of that, God doesn't have dominion. He's not the judge of this world, right?
I think you and I read that story very differently. I don't see Adam and Eve as having much ability to make good choices at all in that story. The big thing being is that they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which means beforehand, when their eyes were not opened, they did not have the knowledge of good and evil. And without the knowledge of good and evil, how could you possibly make choices for yourself with what is right and what is wrong? They could not have possibly known what disobeying God meant. They could not have known what death meant. They could have not known what a lie was or anything like that. It's something that they
That's
possibly couldn't have understood. So that means that they should not have been. It's not just to punish them for eating the fruit from the tree. It would be ridiculous to do that.
judgment and choices are different. They had the ability to choose. They didn't have the comprehension to
I don't think
judge
they
whether
did.
it was right or wrong,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
God had.
but don't you think that's important? We judge people differently if they do not have the ability to determine for themselves right and wrong, correct?
Correct, yes.
So why did God judge them?
Because God is the judge. God is all knowing.
But God
And
judged unfairly.
pardon?
But God judged unfairly because he did not take into consideration that they did not have that knowledge until after they ate from the fruit, and yet he punished them for something.
No, they did. They
that
did have
happened
that
before.
knowledge. He said, don't do it.
Yeah,
Pretty simply.
being told does not mean you understand. Like I can tell, like if I got 6 4-year-olds together in a little corral and I filled it up with a bunch of toys and musical instruments and stuff, and I was like, play to your heart's content, but this one item, this giant sharp knife, no one touch it. I'm going to place it right here in the middle because you could get hurt or you could hurt somebody if you pick it up. So no one touch it. They could all understand what I said. They could repeat it back to me. They're like, all right, we were told, don't touch this. But if I left the room and then came back 2 hours later and one of those kids or more was hurt or worse, who's at fault in that situation?
I mean, you could take that argument and flip it around to a different scenario. You could say, hey, don't eat that chocolate, right?
Let's stay on one point. Like, so who's at fault in that scenario? Is it the 4-year-old because I told them, or is it my fault because I'm the one that truly understands the situation and not the child?
But you're also comparing the ability of comprehension of the 4-year-old to Adam and Eve, which I think.
Yes, I am, because they did not have the knowledge of good and evil. So who's at fault in this in my scenario? Me or the child?
I mean, personally, I would say, I mean, if you want to look at it from the societal standpoint, sure, the parents, yeah, probably bad parents. But, I mean, at the end of the day, no one forced the child to do that. The child did that himself. So, therefore, it was his own action, right?
So we should punish the child and not the parent?
I mean, the every action has consequences, right? The child's punishment, I guess, in this scenario, as it relates to the story, is that he got cut, right? If you're talking about the knowledge of good of evil, they got the result that they knew they would get, right?
No, if the child picked up the knife and harmed another child, should we put that 4-year-old in jail for causing harm to another individual?
Sorry, should you put the child in jail, you're saying?
Yeah, should we put them in jail? Or what if they unalived another child? Should we give that child the death penalty?
If you told them don't murder and they murdered somebody?
Yes, if I told the 4-year-old, play with all the toys, but not this knife, I left for a couple hours and I came back and that 4-year-old ended up picking up the knife and hurt another 4-year-old with it, should we put that 4-year-old in jail?
I mean, you're just going to extremes right now that really don't have anything to do with it.
No, I'm not. I'm saying that is the judgment. If you and me as adults got into a fight and there was no self-defense justification behind it, and I unalived you, I should go to jail. That is the judgment for such a punishment. But if we were suddenly 4-year-olds, we would see that there is suddenly a huge difference, especially if there's an adult saying, but I just told them not to touch the knife. Like, so what? You told them not to. Doesn't mean anything. You're still the one that's responsible. Adam and Eve were not able to determine for themselves right and wrong because they did not have the knowledge of good and evil, which means that the person responsible for them, God, messed up with neglect by just simply making it so that they couldn't reason for themselves, and then allowing the serpent to come in and tell them something else, so that again
they understood the result, though. They understood the fact that if they ate from that, they would get the knowledge of good and evil, right? I mean, sure, you can make the comparison of a 4-year-old, but if you more accurately make it to somebody who's able to comprehend the consequences, right? If you tell somebody, hey, don't stab this person or else you'll kill them, right?
Well,
then,
I would say
if they go ahead and do that action, then yes, that's going to be their fault, right?
Well, I would say no, because Adam and Eve didn't have that knowledge. So like you could tell me, like, hey, if you eat this magic mushroom bar, you will gain the knowledge of Skoggenkind. Okay, cool.
Of what?
I don't know.
Sorry.
Exactly, of Skoggenkind. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that knowledge is. That means nothing to me. So when Adam and Eve were told, you will learn the knowledge of good and evil, they don't know what that means. What the fuck does that mean to them? They don't know what that entails, what that looks like. They don't know what disobedience is. They don't know what death is. So being told, oh, you'll die, okay, cool. What the fuck does that mean? I have no idea.
They knew what good and evil was. They just couldn't make that judgment for themselves.
They did not know what good and evil was. If they did know what good and evil was, they would not have to obtain the knowledge of good and evil through the fruit.
It's completely different saying whether you know what good and evil means versus what you know is good or evil. If I give you the definition for good and evil, right, you can comprehend that just like fine, right? But what God didn't give them and what God was the judgment, like what God was judging for was what is actually good and evil, not what good and evil is, right? So they're able to comprehend what good and evil actually is. They just don't know what is good and evil.
How did they know what evil was if there was no evil in the garden to compare it to?
Oh,
because they knew what good was, which was what God created, and they knew that anything other than that was evil.
No, they only knew good. They knew nothing else, so they knew nothing of this evil.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. If there was only good until they had the knowledge of good and evil, they could not have possibly known about evil. didn't experience it, they didn't engage with it, they didn't have any knowledge of it, so they couldn't have understood or known that it was evil or wrong to disobey God, or recognize that that was even something that was bad of them to do.
Okay, but comprehension doesn't sorry, I'm looking for the word. Comprehension, it isn't necessary to have an experience to comprehend it, right? If I tell you have you ever been skydiving? And you say no, I could probably explain it to you. Hey, skydiving, you jump out of a plane. Okay, yeah, that makes sense, right?
Sure, but what if I don't know what a plane is?
You're saying that there's no possibility that they could have known what evil was because they didn't have the experience of that. Where, I mean,
well, no, I was saying that they didn't have any way to know what it was. I was saying that they didn't have any way to know what it was. One of the ways was through experience. I wasn't saying only experience.
Well, I mean, did they really need to? Because if they know that evil is bad, then
the first mention of evil wasn't until the serpent said it, so they had no knowledge of it. And if they had the knowledge of evil, they wouldn't have been talking to a talking serpent in the first place.
That if they had the knowledge of evil, they wouldn't have been talking to the serpent.
In the first place, they would have known that he was...
But that's irrelevant to the conversation, because the serpent...
Hold on. They would have known that the serpent was being deceptive. So because they didn't know the serpent was being deceptive, they ate the fruit, because up until that point, they had no reason to mistrust anything or anyone, because everything they experienced up until that point was good. They had no concept of evil until they took a bite.
But what the serpent said was contradictory to what God told them, right? Which God was the creator. So anything that's contradictory to what he said, therefore is impermissible, and they made that decision on their own.
Well, how could they know that?
How could they know what?
How if they did not have the knowledge of good and evil, how could they know what God said was good and what the serpent said was evil?
That's exactly why the fall happened, because they fell for that, right?
It seems that God sabotaged them and set them up to fall.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, because God gave them the free will to choose their own liking, right?
But then he crippled them by not letting them have the knowledge of good and evil until it was too late for them to actually use it.
Yeah, but that's irrelevant to that. That's irrelevant to.
That's actually the whole point. That's literally my whole point. It's not irrelevant. That's the thing that we're talking about.
I mean, pretty simply, a no means a no. Like, if you're a parent, you tell your kid something, you say, "Don't do that." I mean, it doesn't really matter what it is. If that's.
But I'm also not going to leave my young child alone in a room with a hot stove either. I'm going to keep my eye on them, especially if I know there is a deceitful serpent wandering around my kitchen. Do you think I'm going to throw a poisonous snake in the kitchen and tell the kiddo to just stay away?
So you're saying that God should have controlled them to make the decision? No, he should have
controlled the snake.
Well, no, I think that God should have just given them the knowledge of good and evil so that they could have truly made a decision for themselves.
Or shown them what would have actually happened if they ate the fruit instead of lying to them.
But if they had
make it so that if they did end up falling of their own actual free choice, that it would only
the belief
affect
is
them
that
and not their kids.
The belief is that God only knows what is good and evil, right? And if they were able to make that decision for themselves, they're not going to know what's good or evil, right? I mean, we see that in our world today, right? I mean, you look at, I guess, I won't reference anything because I don't want to get this banned for you, but like any malicious act or whatever, maybe subjectively the person committing that act thinks it's moral, right? And that's their own judgment. And maybe it's completely true to them. That doesn't make it aligned with what God said. And that's basically what he's getting at is, you can have like your knowledge and your own judgments, but the only true perfect judgment is what he lays out, right?
Well, why is it that this particular God has no quarrels with mass unaliving infants and children, but the other gods of this earth find it detestable and would never put their hands on a child? Why is it that your God gets away with it, when obviously there are gods out there who have better morals than him?
Better, like what God?
Yeah, for example, my gods, they hold children up to a high standard because we had such a high infant mortality rate, just like the Middle Easterns did. So if you touch kids, if you unalive kids, the gods would rain holy hell upon you. Whereas the God of the Bible goes ahead and unalives kids himself.
But again, my point is that God does not have dominion over this earth. All of the heinous acts are breathed through humans. God allows it because he allows free will, right?
You're putting a limitation on God then.
Sorry?
You're putting a limitation on God then.
Oh,
Well,
what sort of limitation?
I would also like to quickly point out free will is definitely not biblical, and I think that
You
the Bible is very clear that it is God's will and not man's will of what happens. Repeatedly, it's stated, and we see multiple examples of God intervening and overriding people's free choices. So,
Like, I guess, could you give me an
the
example that I can?
best example of a lack of free will would be mental illness.
How is that a lack of free will?
Can a schizophrenic choose to stop hallucinating?
No, but that's not to say that God did it. Again, this God doesn't have.
No. So
Back
you
to my
see,
point where God doesn't have dominion over this world, evil does, and the devil
can
does. So that is very simply from the devil.
why are you going off? Okay, does an autistic person have the ability to turn the autism off?
No,
So then we do not have free will even on a biological chemical level.
we had the free will to make the decision to go away from God, and because of that free will, that's why the devil rules over this earth, and those things happen.
Why are we paying for two people who ate a piece of fruit about 6,800 years ago?
Because humans made their decision. I mean, I can't really say why they made that decision, but that's the reality of it.
A
And
random Middle
the
Eastern
truth is
couple does not speak for the entirety of the world.
okay, but the truth is, like, we as Christians believe that God loves us, right? Now, love requires free will, right? If you control somebody into doing exactly what you want, which is a common argument of, okay, if God wanted to make the world perfect, why wouldn't he, right? If you control somebody in a relationship to do exactly what you want, is that love?
If you tell a
yeah,
person
I
that you love that you either love me or you burn in the fiery lake, that is not love. That is coercion, abuse, and gaslighting.
That's
If
no.
you tell your wife, I love you, but if you leave me, I will tie you up and I will hold you in the basement. That is not love. God telling people that if they do not follow him, if they do not come to him, they will end up in the lake of fire along with Satan. That is not love. That is an abusive relationship.
No, but again, that's human's decision, though.
Is there
That's
evil in
that's
heaven?
not God initiating that. God's giving us the tool to say, hey, like, I spend eternity in heaven, right?
so
That's
so
Is there
us.
so to make this a little more clear, if I do have a relationship and I look at my partner and I say, hey, like you and I have started dating, and let's say I'm very well off. I provide everything for them, set them up in a good home, all this stuff. We have a nice place, whatever the case is. And I say, like, oh, I love you, and I, respect your free will choices. If you ever decide to leave me, like I will respect that. But if you do leave me, I will use everything in my power to make the rest of your existence a living hell and make sure that you suffer. And then later on, 5 years down the road, she makes the choice to leave me. Am I then justified to make her life a living hell because she knew the consequences of leaving me and she chose to still leave me?
Again, God's not initiating that, though. It's going back to the fall, right? And the human's
But
decisions.
he is, because he set up the system.
He did not set up. He did not make the decision to do that, though, right? You're essentially what you're getting at. What I'm assuming is that the fault. Like, why did he even put the tree in there, right? And again, it goes back to the control part, right? If God was to control the world and make it like he made it in his image, but if he was to control it and try to make everything perfect, everything in accordance to him, then essentially humans are his slaves, right? But
You finally got it. You finally got it.
sorry?
You finally got it. You just said it.
Yeah, that's the goal of the Bible. That's heaven.
No, that I'm saying that's not the truth. I'm saying that if God was to not like give us the option of free will, we would essentially be his slaves. But he does give us the option of free will.
Do you know what happens in heaven?
Pardon?
Do you know what happens in heaven?
Do I know what happens in heaven? Well, according to biblical texts, heaven's more of a waiting place. So once you die, you go into heaven, and then it's said that on Judgment Day the Lord will come back and make judgments based on the humans that are currently on earth, right? And if you die before, that's your judgment day, right? Like if you die and get into heaven, then essentially you're good. But on Judgment Day, the Lord will come back. If you do not live for the Lord and you do not accept his Son,
you're going off the beaten path in my question.
Well, I think and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler. Are you getting to the final destinations being the Lake of Fire or the New Jerusalem versus heaven itself?
I was getting to the point of like, okay, the 7 years after Judgment Day, and then once that's done, then there'll be 1,000 years as the Lord restores the earth into the new earth. His kingdom comes down to the new earth, and
right.
He makes it right. So that's what I was getting at. But
so heaven is not a waiting place. You're confusing that with Sheol, which literally means the grave. That's per Judaism. But people in heaven, they literally stand around God's throne and worship him 24/7. That is a slave race. We were put on this earth to worship him. That is a slave race. And when you did not worship him the way he desired to do, he sent plagues, he sent unalivement, he sent swarms, he committed the most heinous acts because he forbade it because we didn't bend a knee.
Right, but in heaven, everybody, it's not, I wouldn't call slavery, because in heaven, everybody who's in there has already made that decision for themselves according to free will, right? And everybody
does not. The majority of Christians realize that heaven means you're worshiping God 24/7 around his throne?
I mean, that's essentially in part what I try to do in my everyday life, is glorify him through everything I do, right? So that's
slavery.
I mean, what?
That's literally human slavery.
How is that slavery, right? Like,
name me other gods that demand that of their people.
Of worship?
Yeah. What other gods demand their people?
Okay, let me ask you, if you don't mind me asking, what religion do you identify with? Because you said you identified with one.
I'm a deist under the Nordic pantheon.
Sorry, you're what?
A deist under the Nordic pantheon.
Okay, so do your gods have rules, praises that you do to them, or?
No.
Okay.
There's things you can do, but they are absolutely not required at all.
Okay, so that, just because that's the case for you, doesn't make that invalid for Christianity, right?
Are you Jewish?
And that's essentially what God was trying to do with the Israelites. He was trying to set them apart as a nation, as his people, right? And that's essentially
Exactly.
what Christianity is, right? It's going against societal norms and living according to biblical worldview based off the biblical text.
Christians don't live off of the biblical text at all. In fact, you guys do the polar opposite.
Sorry, can you say that one more time? You're a little bit muffled, man.
Yeah, Nick, you sound a little far away.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I had
No,
the
you're
phone
good.
there.
No worries.
Christians don't follow the biblical laws at all. Not a single one of them. Actually, they make a whole lot of excuses, according to Paul, why they don't have to follow any of the laws. Everything Christians do is blasphemy and heresy against God.
How?
Even in the New Testament, it states women who are praying should have their heads covered. That's New Testament. Do you see any Christian women with their heads covered while they pray?
Where does it say that Christian women should have their heads covered?
In their New Testament. If you give me about 5 minutes, I can go get the scripture for you, as well as also women are not permitted to teach. Did you know that?
That I did know. And again,
Okay. So how many women teachers within the churches do you know of? Women who do have a voice, women pastors, women who are on the board for churches. How about Sunday school teachers?
multiple.
So, yeah, Christians don't follow any single freaking law of the Bible at all. Not a single one, not even from the New Testament, which is the quotation mark New Covenant. Not
Yeah, but
single
that's not to say that is a sin, though.
It is a sin. If you're not following the laws of the Bible, you're sinning. If you're not following the laws of God, you are sinning, as per the Bible. Jesus said, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter of the law is to be changed. The law stands. Not a single Christian will follow that law because of the heretic Paul. Paul comes in and says, no, you don't actually have to follow any of those laws. In fact, you don't even have to get circumcised. And he makes a bunch of new rules for the new covenant.
Yeah,
So,
which the Old Testament laid out specifically that Jesus was the new covenant.
No, Jesus did not fulfill a single messianic prophecy, not a single one. In fact,
according to the Bible, that's in all of the Old Testament, it references the Messiah, right?
Yeah, it references a Messiah, but Jesus does not fulfill the requirements to be that Messiah.
Like what?
Philippians 11. Thank you, Chaos.
I mean, it was pretty cut and dry that the Messiah was God coming to earth, and he would be a perfect human without fault, right?
No, that's not biblical at all. I don't know where you got that from.
That is biblical.
God would come to the earth, but not as a man. Just like he came to the earth in the Old Testament, he did not come as a man.
No, that was the messianic prophecy that he would come as a man, right, to this earth, and he would be a perfect man.
Can you show me the passage that says that God will come as a man and be a perfect man?
To be honest, I am driving right now, so I
Okay,
can't.
well, don't say that on the line.
No.
But
I'm not driving. I'm playing video games.
There
Uber,
you go.
You're in an Uber.
So yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Uber. There you go. I'm twiddling with my thumbs.
But I think I think the clearest and easiest thing to point at is that the Messiah is supposed to be a reigning king, and Jesus was never anointed as a reigning king of Israel. So that is right there one of the biggest messianic prophecies that he did not do.
Not by the Jewish, no.
He was never a king of Israel, no.
He wasn't anointed as a king of Israel, but that wasn't part of the Old Testament text.
Yeah, the Messiah was to be a reigning king of Israel, and Jesus was never a reigning king of Israel.
He was to sit on David's throne.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't necessarily think that a reigning requirement is to be anointed in that sense, but
But he would have to reign as king, and Jesus didn't even do that. So even if we want to take out the anointed part, Jesus was never king.
I mean, according to the Jewish, which rejected him, sure.
According to everyone, he was never the king of Israel. Not by the Jewish, not by the Romans. No one recognized
Exactly,
him as a
but
king.
from the Bible, he was, which is what I'm basing my.
Tyler, did you
The Bible
know?
can recognize him as a king, but the truth of the fact is he was not, and the messianic prophecies are saying that he would be a king, and Jesus was not.
Tyler, did you know that during those times, to be a king, you actually had to get permission from Rome?
Yeah,
Did Rome
which.
give Jesus permission to be a king?
So okay, why do you think they would anoint him if they crucified him?
They didn't anoint him.
Exactly, but again,
Um,
that's
but
you're basing your evidence based off of
the
I
Old
guess I
Testament,
guess the people that hated him.
no,
According to the Bible, it says that he was king.
we're basing it off of the actual people who wrote the Bible, the Jews. We're basing it off of the messianic prophecies that God laid down for them so that they would know who the Messiah was. Jesus did not fulfill a single prophecy. One of the biggest prophecies is he was supposed to bring about world peace. One of the first things he says is, I have not come to bring peace, but a sword to divide. That does not a peacemaker make. And then in Revelation, he comes back lathered in blood. That is not a man of peace. That is a man of war. So there's two messianic prophecies. He messed up. Now, if Jesus did exist and he studied the old texts, like people say he did, well, I have a hard time believing he did. Otherwise, he would have known what he would have had to do to make people believe that he was the Messiah. It was very obvious that whoever wrote the New Testament had no idea about the messianic prophecies.
All right, sorry. What was the first thing you said that he didn't fulfill?
World peace.
World peace. So
Yeah, the
again,
Messiah was to
I'm not
bring
sure the specific verse. It may be something lost in translation, but essentially, God, like Jesus, he was the answer. I don't know if it was referring to world peace as much as referring to heavenly peace in the next life, right? And that was essentially the
No,
main
it wasn't about
prophecy, the resurrection.
prophecy of peace. Isaiah 2, verse 4, he shall judge between the nations and shall arbitrate for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn in war any more. And then we have
So that's not prophet. You don't think that's prophesying the
that's
heavenly realm?
definitely no. That's Earth. That was what was promised for Earth, not heaven.
Yeah, but if we're referencing Revelation, he's referring to New Earth.
Yeah. There is no heaven or new Earth, though. Is there?
But it's what I'm saying.
If
You
he
may
was
believe it or
gonna,
not, but it's not contradictory because that's what he's referencing. He's not referencing the Earth we currently live in. He's referencing the new Earth, the Earth that once
where
Judgment
is
Day
the new Earth?
passes, the Earth that he creates after 1,000 years.
He said to his disciples, before some of you taste death, I will be back. They have been unalived for over 2,000 years. That was a false prophecy. God lays
But
out
according
within
to
the
their
Old
accounts, he
Testament.
did resurrect. So it's not
That was not
You
the
can believe
second
it.
coming.
You can believe
Tyler,
it if you
that's
want or not, but it's
okay.
not
So
contradictory.
yeah, it is because there was no resurrection. That was added much, much later to the text. The original text of Mark ends at them seeing the empty tomb and running away in fear.
it being
After
contradictory
that,
doesn't require a truth value. The truth value that I find is within it not being contradictory, where it says that he rose and it gives the disciples accounts of him seeing him
no,
risen, right? So that's not
I just
contradictory to
explained
the
to
text itself, truth value
You
aside.
don't have an
I
issue
just
when every single gospel that and Nick is right. One of the gospels doesn't even have the resurrection in it originally. It's added later, but every single gospel tells the story differently. They contradict each other on how this quote unquote resurrection happened and what the events are. Don't you think that that's fishy?
They don't contradict each other. They're different accounts from different men. So just because they don't word for word line up, the
No, but
the
they
evidence
say
of the
different
story
things.
remains true.
Like one of them says that it was an earthquake that rolled away the stone. Others say that it was an angel, and others say that they didn't even they have no idea how the stone was rolled away.
Again, they're
Sometimes
giving their
maybe
own
one
personal accounts.
angel.
Maybe John thought
He's
it was an earthquake and Mark thought it was a angel, right? They're giving personal accounts, but the fact of the matter is that event, it lines up.
okay.
they can't give personal accounts. They weren't there. They just heard this from someone else, and they're claiming their story is true. Their story can't be true because A, we have never been able to verify it, and two, their stories don't match up. If I said that my friend and I yesterday went to Walmart and then we hit up Starbucks and then we went to the pet store, and then they're saying, "Oh, we went to Walmart, but then we got in a car accident, so we had to, go and get me a courtesy car from the dealership, and then we went to McDonald's and stuff." Suddenly, our adventure of us hanging out and going places is still true, but everything else about it is contradictory, and everyone has every right to speculate what exactly did we do that day? How exactly did the day go down?
So, Tyler, I would like to read something off to you. The book of Matthew, the actual or accepted date of authorship. The scholars agree on a date between 80 to 90 CE, with some extending in this range as late as 110 CE. Mark, most scholars would accept a date around 66 to 70 CE. Okay? Luke,
Yep.
80 through 90 CE. These were not first-hand eyewitness accounts. They happened way, 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 way later. Now, Mark, it is scholar consensus that the book of Mark was the first testament written. From that testament came Matthew and Luke. We don't even pay attention to John because John is what we call an afterthought book. I don't even know why they put that in there. But anyways, in the original text of Mark, there was no resurrection story at all. It was added in much, much later. All it was an empty tomb, and then somebody much later took some creative liberties. He didn't rise from the unalivement. His body was simply missing. He did not come back and talk to his disciples or see Mary or anything. There was no resurrection story, and they teach you this in seminary school.
So you're saying it didn't include the resurrection, but John also includes accounts of what happened after the resurrection.
So John was not written till 90 to 110 CE. Much, much later. So
Sorry, you said what?
90 to 110 CE. Not only
Right.
would that
John was written when he was I forgot the island's name, but essentially when he wrote Revelation.
Pentos.
Different John. That's not the same John.
John.
John would have been long unalived by the time Revelation came around.
Almost just.
Revelation. Oh, right. We don't really have a complete set date, but they say it was towards the end of Domitican's reign, around the 95, 96 CE, but John would have been long unalived by the time the book of John, or Revelation would have been written. This was somebody else. The truth is, scholars don't know who wrote Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, but they do know that because of the timing of the writings, Jesus and his disciples were long gone.
Jesus and the disciples were what?
Long gone. This would have been third, fourth hand accounts, not first or. I mean, a couple of them might have been second-hand accounts, but they were definitely not first-hand accounts. So by then, we were already playing a game of telephone.
I mean, is that not how most historical data at that time was passed down? Is anecdotes?
No, because the Romans and the Egyptians were meticulous at record keeping, so they wrote everything down as it happened. Daniel actually was pretty much written around the time the things in that book were happening during the reign of Antiochus IV. So there are a lot of texts that were being written down as they happened, but Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were not being written down as they happened. They were written long after.
Okay. Well, I apologize to cut you off. I have to get going. I've skimmed pretty late, but I appreciate your guys' time. Appreciate your guys' insight.
Yeah, thank you for spending your time with us, Tyler. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. It is getting pretty late, so I thank you for being here.
All right.
Have
Yeah.
a
No
good
worries.
night, Tyler. Blessed be.
Sorry. What was that?
I said, have a good night, Tyler. Blessed be.
Yeah. You too, man. Have a good night.
But that was good, guys. I appreciated having Tyler on. I like having conversations with people I don't agree with, where they don't turn into just yelling fits.
Like the last guess? What was that?
Yeah, I don't know. He very quickly went from being pretty decent to just devolving into some crazy shit.
He just started screaming like, "What the hell?" I love that he brought up Cliff though. As soon as he brought up Cliff, I was like, "Dude, you lost all your cred. You're done. You're done."
Oh my god! Like
I
just
honestly,
Cliff is
oh sorry,
ridiculous. No, just Cliff
yeah,
is just stupid.
yeah, Cliff is. I honestly had just come up to offer to be your quick look up Bible verse person because I heard you having some issues. That's the only reason I was coming up to ask you if you wanted a quick search first.
Oh, well, I mean that'll be good to know for the future. I'm going on vacation tomorrow, so I'm like multitasking. I'm trying to pack and make sure I have
Ooh.
everything. So I just didn't feel like going to grab my Bible at that time, and I can't imagine how saying, "Oh, I can tell you exactly what you need to go and find the scripture yourself" is too much for somebody. I guess, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's
It's
like if someone told me I don't know the scripture, but it's if you go to Google and you say what's the passage where
hmm
Jephthah sacrifices his daughter, that's all the
yeah,
information I would need to go and find that passage.
yep. I do that all the time when they give me Bible verses. I'll just be like, okay, well, what did you say it said again? And then I'll quick look. It takes 2 seconds out of your life.
Yeah. I'm gonna let up this one guy because I said that I was going to, but then I'm gonna get off here in a couple minutes because my phone's dying. Yeah, we'll see. Hey Gabe, what's up?
What's up, man?
Are you a Christian?
No, sir.
No? Alright. Is there something that you would like to say? Some comments, some questions? I will be getting off the live here pretty soon, but I said that I
Uh,
would let you up. Just wanted to see if there's something you'd like to say.
well, I thought you guys were like having like a conversation type deal, but if you're tired and whatnot,
I got you. Well, I mean, I just have to shower and get ready. I have to catch a plane here in a few hours, so. But I appreciate your time, and I'll be on tomorrow, I'm sure, at some point, and we'll have more conversations if you want to come back.
that'll work, man.
All right. Have a good night.
I'll go ahead and follow you so I can see.
Awesome. I'll send you a follow back.
All right, buddy.
God, y'all sound so damn young.
I just
Feel
turned
like
30,
you're so
so
young.
can't call me that anymore, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess we're within the age range now.
We're entering that we're transitioning from that young to middle ages.
Well, I'm almost at the middle age. I 40 in 2 years, man. Ugh.
Yeah, I was like, I think I have a decade at most now. I'm getting
Yep,
there.
you're almost there.
Yeah. Well, I
Well,
am
we're
gonna get going. I got some shit I gotta do before I go catch this plane. So
oh,
thank you for being here. I'm sure I'll see you around.
yeah, enjoy your vacation, and it's really good to hear your voice again, man. You've been missed.
Yeah, it's been good to be back. I've just been putting in a lot of extra work at and stuff
Yeah.
like that, taking on more responsibility. But it's paid off. I got my
Good.
$4 raise that I asked for, which
Sweet.
is a pretty big jump. They gave it to me in like halves and halves, but it's been 3 months since I got the first half, and I've been putting in so much time to get the other half, and I got it last week. So very excited.
Oh, damn, I'm proud of you, man.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it. But all right, well, I'll talk to you guys soon, and I'll try to be on in the next day or two, and we'll have some more conversations.
Awesome. Take care of yourself.
You too. Bye.
Bye.